Welcome. I'm Frank Conkling with Pane Consulting, and this is Pane Consulting's Deep Dive Workshop. And this time we're going to look at using CAD files inside of ArcGIS Pro, and we're going to explore and see if we can get a better understanding of how they're actually accessed and utilized inside of Pro. The project file that we have happens to be an ArcGIS Parcel Fabric, but that's not important. Because this works the same whether or not you have, whether you're using a parcel fabric or whether you're just using simple feature classes, the way that it interacts is exactly the same. So again, it's not just critical how we're looking at it, just the way it works. So let's start with this. And if we are looking at our catalog pane inside of ArcGIS Pro Parcel Fabric, we can see there's a folder here. And when we open it up, we happen to have a folder full of subdivision, of AutoCAD files that are DWG files that happen to be subdivisions. And if we click on any one of these and open them up, we see that the way that this is presented to us now is that this drawing file can be separated according to the geometry types. There's a layer for annotation, a layer for COGO points. There's a layer for multi-patch, layer for points, layer for polygons, polylines, and sites. Now, it's depending upon the type of software that was used to create that DWG file as far as how it goes and puts it in. There are certain AutoCAD formats in which you can actually do 3D, in which case you get additional elements in here. But the important thing on this is just looking at that DWG file. We can see automatically that it's broken up into the various geography types that are stored inside of there. With the AutoCAD file, if we go and tell it to just put it into our current map, what happens is, and this is at the DWG level, it's going to go and add this, and it will add each of those as a separate type of feature class in here. And this is all of the feature classes that get loaded into your project file when you go and load a DWG. In addition, and I don't know whether you noticed it, but in addition, it also went and gave us a notice that there was no coordinate system assigned to this DWG. And that's pretty standard. Rarely will you find an AutoCAD file that has an actual coordinate system or a projected coordinate system. Instead, they'll go and the drafters will go and input data in a coordinate system, but they won't assign it to that DWG because they're primarily working in a CAD file. They're just looking at that final drawing and what's going to happen with that final drawing in there. All right, so let's explore a couple other things here. Let's go to our lines group and let's zoom out to our lines group and see, in this case, this is a fairly good AutoCAD file. They don't have extra lines in them. Let me go and show you one that does have extra lines in it and show you what I mean by this. Let's go and add this one. All right, now let's go, and this is a separate one here. Notice how these are now, because it puts them into the table of contents according to the geometry type. We have one set here that I'm going to go group together. And then we have the Ocean Cove one here, which I'm going to go and right-click and group together. So we have two different types here. In this case, let me go to this other one and zoom to it and show you what I mean by a a AutoCAD file that has extraneous line work in it and extraneous information in here. If I go and turn off my points and my tax parcels here, you can see that this CAD file has got a series of, it's got a main area here that looks like this is where they did most of their work, and this is probably how it's supposed to fit together. But at the same time, they also have over here an outline of it. They have the road area, road areas here. They have all sorts of extra line work in there. And these could have been part of viewports that were in there, because there's paper view and there's world view inside of an AutoCAD. So this could have been for world view, and this could have been for paper views. Maybe they were doing a detail sketch on it. The point on this is you always want to make sure to look to see whether or not that CAD file has extra lines in there, extra things that are drawn out there that are not needed and are just extra for the drawing files themselves. So let's go ahead and get rid of this one here. And let's go back to where we were before. And we'll turn this one on just so that we can talk about this a little bit more. So when I brought in my DWG file by just going and clicking on the header of that, again, remember we can open it up and see the different elements in here, and just sort of to go and show you again, this one has fewer elements in here because this was a different CAD package that prepared it. This one actually has some sort of surveying background in here. So it's got COGO points in there and a site area on here. So just be aware that there's certain default elements that are part of that AutoCAD file that you're going to want to deal with. And again, if you just take the DWG and right click and say add it to my current map, it will go and put it in place using those coordinates that are stored inside that DWG file. I'm going to tell you that usually is not the most efficient way to go and do this, because you wind up with all sorts of extra information. You wind up with annotation layers. You wind up with, in this case, multi-patch layers, which are 3D layers. You wind up with polygon layers on here and site layers on here. To efficiently use this, you would not just load the DWG in there. Instead, you would look at the polyline layer. This is the line feature class inside of here that contains the line work. And you could go ahead and add that in there, and it will now go and add that line work in here. And if you note again, it says unknown coordinate system on here. All right. So when we go and add that one line work, we can expand that in our table of contents, and we can see what they've done now is they've actually taken that geometry type and broken it down into the individual layers on here, so that we have this plat polygon in here that looks like it has all of these lines in here. Then we also have a properties, PROP, it looks like it's properties. We have a text layer, a PPROP layer, a PRM layer. I'm assuming that is some sort of permanent reference monument layer. We have match lines. If we do our match lines here, these are the lines that are used between the sheets on here. We have right-of-way center lines in here that we can turn off. We have tick marks. For some reason, they have tick marks in here. PCPs are, let's see if we can identify some of these. A PCP is in fact, PCP is a permanent control point, and you can see them turning those on and off. We have easement layers so that we have the easements inside of here. I can turn those ESMs. They also have another one called easements spelt out. But by looking at it this way, we can attempt to figure out what's actually in this drawing and why, how are they attempting to represent this as they're going. I wish there was an easy way. I wish there was a standard layering system, but unfortunately there isn't. So it's just through experiment and trying to go and figure out what is this actually trying to show me, and what do I need to do with this? So interacting with these lines, what you're going to do is you're going to try to dig through and see if there's a way to figure out what each of these are. For example, what is this one here? And I'm going to go in and select that one and go to my attributes, and it's going to tell me that it is on the layer prop. Well, I thought the layer prop was property lines. So it may be that they've got that stored on the incorrect layer on here. So again, you want to be careful, just be sort of conscientious of what you've got and the fact that it may not be exactly structured as you want it as a GIS person, but you know, just sort of experiment and see what you've got there. So one of the things that we would do is on here, we would usually go in here if we wanted to go and use this data, we would go and right click and say select, and we would select everything on that one layer. It would then go and give us a selection of all lines that are stored on that one layer. All right, let's go back here for a minute as I'm thinking about this. I've got this, I've started editing on here and I am editing. So why don't I just go and take this one line here and delete it? All right. Be aware, you can view CAD files and you can select and you can copy, but you cannot in any way edit the contents of a CAD file. It is for view only. You can bring it in. So if you're going to take and use anything inside of a CAD file, the first thing you're going to have to do is copy that and bring that into another layer that you do have edit rights on. All right. By the way, Chris is moderating the chat window. So if you have any questions here, go ahead and put them up in the chat window, and Chris will make sure to stop me from talking and get me to go and handle and address those issues you've got there. So right now, what we've done is we've looked at the fact that AutoCAD files are now displayed, where we actually have options as far as what we bring in. If we bring in the top level, the actual DWG of the AutoCAD file, it will bring all layers associated with it. It will put them in the coordinates that they were originally created in. The odds are they're not going to be projected. And it will have a separate layer group for each of the geometry types. Inside of that layer group will be a separate layer for each of the layers inside the AutoCAD file. So we would open it, turn it off, turn it on, experiment, see what's inside of there as we're going on there. So again, two different ways of looking at this. If we abandon this and go back to that other AutoCAD file that we were looking at, which is this one here, let's go ahead and take this, turn this off. Let's go and add this full drawing file to our project. All right, we can see that it's going to add all of these group layers. Let's take this Ocean Cove down. Take all of these group layers, and they are the various geometry types that are part of this, and add them. And then each of those are going to have their own layer structure.
Yeah, I'm getting video from your iTunes hotspot.
I'm sorry, Dan. So this is the ano layer, and it's got all the different layers that are in there, and we can turn them on and off. Let's go ahead and go to the polyline here and zoom to this layer, see it where it is. Again, this is the one that's got all these other components in here. And I'm going to turn off all of the ano on here so I don't have to see any of the ano. I also have points on here, and I'm going to turn off these points. I have polylines in here for the polyline group. I'm going to leave those on. I have multi-patch on here. I don't want any multi-patch in here. These are polygons, usually 3D polygons, but they're polygons. And then finally, I have a polygon grouping, which has the individual layers and any polygons that are actually on those layers. All right. And again, this is a group here. So if I were to go and try to open it, it would not give me an attribute table because each of these has their own attribute table associated with them. All right, with the entities for those. So it is a little different the way it handles these features relative to what you would expect on here. So let me go through this CAD file and see if I can figure out what I'm going to be looking for. Again, I have a P-prop one. Let's turn off section line. Let's turn off text. Let's turn off the easements, the right-of-way center lines. Here we have another prop, which is this color here. Let's leave that on. Easement drainage, South Florida easements, PRMs, easements in the maintenance, PCP, ticks, shades, parcel labels, match points, monuments on here. And we keep going down, and there's objects. So obviously this was a slightly more complex in here. I'm going to turn those all off. So I think that I've got now the actual lines that I want for this parcel. All right. So the question is going to be, well, how do I select what I'm really looking for if I want to go and edit? Because remember, I cannot edit this inside of here. I cannot delete this, cannot in any way change that. So I have to go and select it and bring it in. And there's a couple ways to do this. If I have everything else turned off here, I can just go ahead and select these. But I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to go here and show you a trick with this, is that if I have a specific layer I'm looking for, I can right-click on that layer and go to Selection, and I have there either Select All in this layer, or I have just select what's in this visible extent that I can see. So in this case, I'm not selecting everything else on here. I'm not selecting all this other element in here. I'm only going to be selecting what was inside my drawing extent for that one on here. And I think here, if I go and add this, I can add that to there. So with that, I have selected everything inside of this one subdivision. All right, so we actually have a layer here called construction lines that I'm going to go and copy these to those construction lines. So again, I am editing here. I'm going to say copy, and then I'm going to go and say, I'm going to pull this down, and I can't paste it into there, sorry. Go here, go to my attributes, and here are my lines on here. I'm going to say copy. pull this down and say paste special. And it will come up to where do you want to go and paste this. It will give me a pull down showing all of the feature classes that I have turned on and are editable and selectable at this time that I can go and edit. So I'm just going to go put these into my construction lines, and I'm going to tell it keep all the attribute values in here. It's going to paste them into my construction lines here. All right. When I'm done here, I'm now going to...
Frank, we have a question from Steve when you have a chance.
Go ahead. Yes.
What are those two tiny icons in the upper left corner of the map frame under the tab named ArcGIS Parcel Fabric?
Steve,
a sprocket and a rectangle with a red dot.
Yes, Steve. These are specific to the Parcel Fabric. All right. And again, this project is a Parcel Fabric. That's why you see them here. I could do this in a non-Parcel Fabric project if you'd like. I'll go ahead and do that, make it easier. Matter of fact, let me go and show you that. Let me go in here and create a new map, a new view. I will create a new map here. All right. This is 2D. Let's go in here, create a...
He said, no worries, just curious, had not seen before.
Yeah, that is in fact, this is for a record. A record is in fact a polygon feature class that's used as a coordinating element inside the Parcel Fabric. This is, let me go in here in my view. Let me go and, wow, why am I having such a problem trying to figure out how to create a new map there. By the way, I love that in ArcGIS Pro 2.8, there is this search command. Anytime you're looking for a specific command, you can go ahead and open that up, and it will go and get you to the command and show you any other commands that you might be looking for. It's a really nice feature. Esri did a good job on that one. So let me go in here and pull the construction lines in here just so we can go through this. And this is...
Don't worry about going down the rabbit hole unless you want to.
Yeah, let's do this. It's another chance for us to go and explore a little bit more here. All right, so we've got that in here. And it gives me a chance to show you some other elements of ArcGIS Pro. For example, I've created a new map inside of this project file, but it doesn't coordinate with any others that I have. So I'm going to go back to this main one that I had, and I'm going to go back to, go in here and go to my last view here. And then there's a tool inside of here under the View tab that says, take all of my maps that I have and keep them synchronized as far as the scale and centering, so I can go and do that. And now when I go back to this map here, it actually is the exact same drawing extent as what my other one was. And these are those COGO lines that I just copied and pasted in here to go and demonstrate. Let's go ahead and take these polylines and put them into this current map just so we can see. There they are, exactly the same. All right, let's turn those off. Let's explore this a little bit more. So as we came in here, these were just individual lines coming in, and they were copied and pasted in. I'm going to go and show you also on here under symbology. I'm going to go and use one of ArcGIS Pro's symbology tricks to show you where the vertices are on these lines. So in order to do that, I'm going to click on here, and I'm going to go to properties, and I'm going to go and add a structure here. And I'm going to add a, obviously this was I didn't set up the scales correctly yet, but I'm going to go and add a marker symbol here. Matter of fact, I'm going to add 2 of them. Then I'm going to go from the structure back to the layers, and I'm going to take and set in the properties of each of these markers. This first one, I'm going to make red. Everybody loves Mars red. And then I'm going to go and set it down to like 5 points. And I'm going to tell it to take this marker and put it at the extremities of each of the lines. And you can see here, there'll be one here and one here. Then I'm going to take this marker. Again, I'm going to go up and make it, I'll make this one green. I'll make this one 5 points also. And then I'm going to go and set this one that instead of along the line, put this on the vertices of here. Turn these others off. Tell it, go ahead and apply this. And as I go in, let's make sure that my scale is set correctly. There we go. So I did that for a reason. I wanted to see whether or not any of these were these polylines that I copied and pasted in, whether they were true polylines, whether they had vertices on the ends of them, or whether each of these are individual discrete lines. And when I look at this, again, I'm going to go to here, go to select. That's a line, that's a line, that's a line, that's a line, that's a line. So they are all individual separate lines that are part of this. The curves, they seem to be good curves. They aren't densified curves at all. If I look in here, that's one curve, that's another curve, that's another curve, and another one. So it looks like overall the structure looks to be pretty good with this. All right, so now I need to go through and look at this and say, well, what am I going to use? What's part of this? And how am I going to use it? In this case, I'm going to start looking at the extraneous lines that were in here that really aren't part of this element that I'm going to be mapping. And I'm going to go through and delete them. So right away there, go through this. Looks like this needs to be taken out also. By the way, also the question you had, there is no, this is called a heads up display for the record. There is no heads up display in this map itself on here. So now I've got all of these seem to be fine. One thing I do notice is that there's splits in these lines here. I'm not quite sure whether that's what the intent was. I might have to go and pull in the annotation to see if there's separate annotation for this or whether that's just a residual of the drawing. It might be that there was some sort of easement or something running through there. But I basically have all of the lines that I have copied and pasted from that drawing file, from that DWG file, and copied and pasted them in here. All right. I'm going to go and pull in from my database the construction polygons also. So I have a set of polygons. So as I work with this, I can see what I'm actually doing here. Now these lines, these COGO lines that I have on here, if I look at the design of them, they actually have COGO values on here. Well, they have an attribute field on which I can store COGO values. They have the direction, which is the bearing, the distance, the radius, the arc length, and radius 2 for things like Bezier curves or for spirals. So, but they, if I go and select some of these and look at the attributes on them, none of them have COGO values on them. So one of the first things I might want to do is I might want to go and just select all of these lines in here and go and do update COGO, even though I misspelt it, and have it go and calculate the COGO values on here. Now these COGO values that it's going to be calculating, these are the COGO values for the geometry of here. This may not match exactly the COGO values for what the annotation said on the CAD file. That's something I might want to explore a little bit now. Let's bring in the annotation for that CAD file to see what that is saying. It's saying PRM, it's saying some distances in here. In this case here, this is a radius of 292.23, a distance of 144.33. This is 138.98. This is the labels, by the way, and this is the annotation on here. So it looks like this is actually a pretty good CAD file from that standpoint, in that it matches the annotation and what it was intending to be. Just be aware that when you do update COGO values, it really is calculating the actual bearing and the length of the line and the radius and the arc length for a curve. It's not pulling it from something else. So if there was a drawing, if there was any scaling or rotation going on, it wouldn't know how to go and utilize that. But in this case, we have values that are reflective of the actual drawing file here. All right. So looks like we're in good shape here. The next thing I might want to do is I may want to go in here and actually build polygons out of this. That's one reason why I pulled in this COGO value, or the construction polygons on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and select some lines, and I'll hold down my control key and I'll unselect these others here. All right, and I've got those lines here, and there's a command in here called construct polygons. All right, and you tell it what layer or what template you're going to be using, and then what the tolerance is. This cluster tolerance allows there to be gaps between the actual lines that are being used to build that polygon. In this case, this is using a standard of 0.003281. By the way, that 3281 is a magic number that references the relationship between feet and meters, but it's basically looking at 100th of a meter in here, and it's going to go and trim and extend these lines to make sure that they match enough to be able to construct the lines. So since I have lines constructed, since I have lines selected, I can say go ahead and construct a polygon, and it will go and construct that polygon from those lines. And when I select this, I'm still on construct, which is looking for me to go and have, it's limiting, it's filtering the selection so I can only select lines for this. What I want to do is I want to move over to a different tool, any other tool, to get off of there, and then suddenly I can use my selection. My attributes, I then have an attribute here which has the length and the area calculated on there. What we've seen with this is that it has gone and brought over the lines. We were lucky enough to have them in the correct coordinate system, even though it wasn't defined that way. We filtered the lines that we were going to bring in, and then we copied and we pasted them inside of our map document, inside of our feature classes as we're going on here. And then we used those and we made sure we symbolized them so that we could see any vertices on there. We then took the lines and we went and selected them so that we could construct polygons from that. So this is a simple way of taking CAD information from a CAD file, bringing it into a drawing, copying and pasting, taking those CAD lines, manipulating them however we need to manipulate them so that we can utilize them. So what happens if, and I'm going to continue with these simple lines here. What happens if, as I go through here, I'm looking and it's like, well, there's these multiple lines in here. I really don't want them. I just want single lines in here. How can I get rid of these? Well, I have, let's go ahead and select these lines in here. And this is not a parcel fabric, so I don't have that. It has to be within a parcel fabric. So for it to go and utilize some of these other tools that I'm looking at. So I'm going to go back to the parcel fabric one here because I have, with the parcel fabric, I have additional tools available to me. So in here, same thing, I've got these lines that I wish to go and make solid lines with no splits on them. All right, I don't want to move those. So I've got a selected set of lines in here. Inside of here, I want to make sure I've got these. This is here. And this will not let me do this. Let's see. Simplify. Let's look at this one here. Simplify. This tool actually allows me to go and take these construction lines. Let me get down all the way down through here. Where are my construction lines? And takes them and allows me to go and, if I'm doing this correctly, allows me to go and create just single lines on here. And I can use, and it should remove, and it didn't. It's one reason why you don't fly by the seat of your pants sometimes with these demos. It's still 2 points, isn't it? Yep, it is. All right, I'm going to abandon that option there. What I'm going to do now is show you, by the way, is there any questions about taking the CAD lines, copying, pasting them into simple feature classes and utilizing them there before I move into the parcel fabric and how to go and utilize them inside of a parcel fabric?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay. All right. So let's turn on our line layers here. All right. So I've got all of these lines in here. And what I'm going to do, this is my construction lines. I'm going to say selection, go and select the elements of that layer that's within my current visual extent. And I now have them all selected. All right. So with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a function inside the parcel fabric to go and create automatically polygons for each of these and use this to go and check and verify what I'm on. All right. I think Mark has a question. Is that right, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah.
He says our CAD files have holes where there are pins. The lines property lines don't connect. What is the quickest way of fixing the issue? I just use the extend line tool, but is there something better?
There actually is, Mark. On here, when you go to do a copy and paste, well, there's a couple options in here. But one of the things you'll notice is, remember what I went and said, go ahead and update the data on here. And wasn't what it was. Where was? Oh, when I went to do the construct polygons, it said you could go and extend it. That's one way that you can do this. The other way, yeah, I think it might be just going and doing the extend on here will allow you to go and do this. Unfortunately, there's some issues there. So let's go and sorry about that, Mark. I think extend is probably right now the best way for you to go and do this on here. And let's leave it at that. So I'm going to go in here right now and take, because this was already mapped out in here. I've got tax lines. Make sure there's my tax lines. Oh, why are my tax polygons not selectable? They're turned on. Oh, let's go to another tool here. Let's go to a different tool. Turns out that my active tool was preventing me from selecting any polygons, which, by the way, it's a nice that they are going and doing that, but you can see how often that gets me. It's like I'm not quite sure what's going on there. So I'm going to go and delete these parcels that are underneath this underlying parcels that I'm going to copy and paste in here. I'm going to select these. I'm not doing this with a record, so it's actually an empty space now on here. And I'm going to turn on my lines again. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to build this new set of parcels inside of here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a record, and a record is just sort of a way to organize what I'm doing. The record captures everything that I create and everything that I delete. So I'm just going to call this CAD demo and just remap these. That's good on here. I'm going to select my elements in here. So once I have a record, I then have access to all of the Parcel Fabric tools that are available to me. And I'm going to tell it to go and copy these lines into my tax grouping. It's actually going to copy each of these lines and put them into the tax lines layer. All right. And I'm going to turn off my construction lines right after this, so we can see that. And I'm going to focus on just the lines that I copied and pasted in there. All right. And if I look at here are all the lines that I copied and pasted in. And if I zoom in here and look, it actually turns out that I have little bitty dots here. These are called seeds. Now these seeds are part of the parcel fabric, so that when you go and create a set of lines within the parcel fabric, it will attempt to also figure out whether or not there's elements in here that form a closed polygon, and it will build a seed for that closed polygon. Let me go in here and expand that just to make sure that we can we can see that. That is a seed. Let me go and select that seed. And as I go through here, it will tell me that this is in fact a seed that I'm seeing here. All right, so I now have seeds on here to all of these parcels. And I can go in here and tell it to take all the lines that it created with this active record and evaluate them and see if there's a seed inside of there and build a parcel with that. Now, on purposely, I'm going to take and delete one of these seeds and show you that if I do not have a seed, it will not build. So let's go ahead and build our active record. Let it evaluate every single line that's in here. And if these lines form a polygon and there's a seed on there, go ahead and create a polygon. Let it go through and build these. So Mark, while I'm waiting on this, I'm thinking about your question again. And I know you currently are using the ArcMap Parcel Fabric, which has that ability when you go and take lines and copy and paste them into a build to go and automatically extend that. But that's not necessarily part of the ArcGIS Parcel Fabric. You have to use the standard extend tool to go and do that. All right, so if you look here, it built all the seeds that I had, but did not build the one that I had not created a seed for, or it did not create a seed for. Since I went and deleted that seed, it did not build it for it. All right, so how do I go and create this now? If I want to go and create this, I can select these lines again and unselect this. And I can say create a seed, and it will create a seed for that. And then I can tell it, go ahead and build that. So did I actually have to select those lines to create that seed? No. I actually, when I told it to create the seeds, it will still evaluate every line that I have inside of this record. And if it forms a closed polygon, it will create a new parcel polygon for me. So one more question. How do I build this thing out now? I have some options. I can then go and build and select every one of these lines in here, or I can use the tools inside ArcGIS Pro. And let me go and do this. And let me go and create a base parcel using autocomplete. When I use autocomplete, it should go and build those two polygons. All right. So I'm now, instead of building lines, I'm building a polygon. Let me go and merge those two together into an existing feature here. Doesn't matter which one of these I build. All right. And now let me go and make sure that it builds all the lines that are required and all the points that are required for this. And I can say, go ahead and build this. And it went and built everything that I needed for that polygon. So let me go and show you a couple other things in here just to show you what I actually created and built out of that. Let me go and turn this down here so I can just reflect what's on here. This is a fairly good sized county, by the way, that I'm working in. So there's everything that I built, all the lines, all the points, turn on my points, all the points that are in here and all the lines that I built as part of this record that I just put together in here. All right. Let's go back to here. All right. So we've gone through a couple different things. We've looked at some different CAD files. Well, let's go and look at, while we still have a little bit of time, see if, again, none of these actually had any sort of coordinate information stored on them. Is there a way for us to go and define that so that we don't have that problem anymore? We don't have that thing popping up all the time? There is. We can actually go and say, define projection, I think is what it's called, define projection. And what we can do here is we can say, this is the file that we want to go and project it. And it says, we don't know what that thing is. So I could tell it to go and select. In this case, I'm going to import it because I know it's the same as my drawing. It's going to be the same as that projection on it. And it's going to go and take all of these and define that as being the projection file for that AutoCAD file. All right. I have pretty much covered everything I want to cover. I'm going to open it up for questions. Is there any questions coming out of this? Anything that I haven't covered yet on here? Something you want to go and explore a little bit further? Nothing?
Nothing
All right.
just yet.
All right. I can tell you one of the things that you want to watch out for is, besides there being extraneous lines on here because of, let's go up here, all these extraneous lines, not on this one, is it? It's on the other one, this one here. All these extraneous lines on here. Besides this, you'll also find, and it's not on this data set, you'll also find that sometimes this will be a polyline, a complete polygon in here. Let me go and create it as if it's a polygon line here. Let me merge this together.
Frank, we do have a question from Steve in the chat.
Yes, go ahead.
He said, this question comes from a coworker that isn't here today, but are there newer versions of DWG files that are not compatible with ArcPro yet?
There probably are. The problem is, because it's difficult to tell what version this is, the only thing that I could suggest is make sure that your ArcGIS Pro is as current as possible. They're trying to keep up with it. I know there are some new versions of AutoCAD and DWG, and there are some inconsistencies, especially with ArcMap, that it can't read those. But I have personally found that there are DWGs that cannot be read in ArcMap that will open up completely, and you can read them inside of ArcGIS Pro, no problem with it. So again, all of the development work is being done inside of AutoCAD, or excuse me, inside of ArcGIS Pro. So I would go over there. Let me just show you this one more thing here. So if I've got these, let's go ahead and go to Edit, Copy. Let's paste these into my CAD, my construction lines here. Let's turn this off. And let's merge these together, just so we can see what this looks like as a polyline. Merge. And just into an existing line here. So this is now one line instead. And just to show you, if I go to the attribute table, this is, get out of here. This is one line here. That's all this is on here. So Oftentimes you will copy and paste CAD files in here, and there actually are true polylines. They are not COGO lines on them. How do you go and handle that? In this case, you can go to modify, and there is a tool called split into COGO lines. When you split into COGO lines, it will go and take those and automatically split them up into individual lines. And then when we go in here and look at these, let's go to the attributes here. You will find that they have the bearing and distances automatically calculated when you went and split into COGO lines. So if you copy and paste a CAD line in and it winds up becoming just a polyline, there is the split into COGO lines tool that will automatically split them and assign COGO values to them for you. All right. Hopefully, this answers some of the questions that you had with CAD lines. CAD lines really aren't tough once you understand how they're being represented inside of ArcGIS Pro. I can tell you there are some complexities when you move into 3D and you move into some BIMs, some building information models. There is some complexity in there, but most of us are just going to look at taking these lines and bringing them in, identifying which lines we have to bring in, recognizing we have to copy and paste them into a layer that we can work with them. You cannot go and edit the CAD lines. Once you get over that, it's actually just, it looks like you're working with any sort of simple feature class that you can go and manipulate and use it. They act exactly the same, but you do have to know that it has to be copied and pasted in. All right. Hopefully we covered something new. Hopefully you learned something. And with that, I'm going to go and close out. Thank you all for attending. Thanks for attending, and we hope you enjoyed this workshop. If you have questions, would like some more details about anything we discussed during this workshop, or if you or anyone at your organization would like information about training, support, or ways in which we can help you with your GIS needs, please contact me at frank@pandaconsulting.com or call me at 561-691-3277, and we can discuss how we can help you with your needs.